Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. And today's all about small groups, guys. Small groups are something that, just looking back 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we did not even have an option for what we would consider a small group. And thanks to a lot of carrier developments, a lot of process developments. Not only do we have options for small groups, but as we're just kind of running the numbers, looking over the metrics internally as the Buddy INS team, we're finding that they're a very healthy and strong part of our business, more of a contributor to our overall business than we originally thought. So we're continuing to put a lot of attention on small groups. We talked a little bit about this on last week's study group. We kind of got caught in the vortex of the carrier list and talking about all that we have available there, not just group products, but individual products written for multi-life scenarios. But we also built out a whole brand spanking new small group enrollment guide page that I'd like to demo today because we didn't have time to debut it last week. So I just want to give a little bit of a primer to this, and then we'll show off the page and give you guys an idea of all the resources that we have there to help you work with small groups. And I think this is such an important discussion because unless you have a very special and specific relationship, or you are a benefit broker who's been doing this a long time, I think the case is most of you will be bringing us in the employer space for, especially for your first one, will end up being a small group. Not always that way, but that's what we see most of all. People who are bringing us their first case are generally bringing us something under 100 lives, and generally not something that's 10,000 plus, 1,000 plus even. Um, but small groups are really a good experience for a number of reasons. Number one, I think that small groups tend to be incredibly receptive to any opportunity for new benefit offerings, because small groups tend to be quite limited in what they can actually access on the market. That's one of the main reasons why PEOs exist, right? Smaller companies have a hard time getting the benefits that some of the big guys get, right? Some of the larger carriers get. So PEOs kind of pool and smaller employers together to be able to access some of those benefits. So small groups are no stranger to being limited to what benefits that they can access. And in this market, it was no different, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Small groups weren't really able to access much in the group long-term care space, and now they can. So it's a pretty good likelihood that you're going to run into a small group that is receptive to the idea of adding group long-term care, or they've been trying to actually access group long-term care, but haven't been able to. So I think it's a great opportunity there. And Gretchen, you'll probably share this perspective with me, but when we work with small groups, we have great relationships with our large groups as well. But I think small groups can sometimes tend to be so mom and pop and so intimate of a setting that logistically, I think they are incredibly easy to work with. And those relationships are very, very solid and easy to form when you start getting closer to a small group and working with them a bit more. Do you find that same experience?
Uh, yes. I don't do a lot of work directly with small groups because we have a lot of turnkey um, materials to that they can just take and run with.
Right.
But yes, they're definitely more hands-on, which will make life easier for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you make a really good point about the convenience of small groups. A lot of the times, because of the nature of the case design, we don't tend to need a ton of marketing or
Right.
communications. Though our marketing team is involved, we do still build landing pages and
Mhm.
put on webinars, things of that nature for small groups that I think they deserve that attention, that education, that kind of enablement as well. But we do have kind of a more streamlined path to do that.
Yeah, and
Obviously, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And we've had, don't uh, poo-poo small groups because we have had small groups who that have done much better than even some of our larger groups as far as average premium. So yeah, so small groups can be very lucrative for new cases.
Yeah, I mean it's an opportunity to cast a wide net
Hmm.
there too,
Yeah.
especially if you're bringing in a number of small groups. Those really add up. Yeah, another really good point. Employer funding is big with small
Yes.
groups because we, for these cases, we absolutely need to make sure we're hitting the participation minimum, right? And the lowest we can kind of get at for a participation minimum is three with the standard. But employer funding is what allows us to do that, right? It's
Hmm.
highly likely that if you tried to do voluntary, which we don't even support on our end, to be quite transparent, if you tried to do voluntary for a small group, generally under 100 lives, um, you really run the risk of not hitting that participation minimum. But knowing that we can employer fund 3, 6, 10,
Hmm.
15 people and hit that minimum and then some, exceed even like percentage-based participation minimums that the carrier would set for large groups, they are actually very happy to see something like that. And for small groups, since you don't have to fund, 100, 200 employees, costs tend to be agreeable, especially when you compare them to things like major medical, right? It's a drop in the bucket comparatively. And with the rise of, term-based products, we can show something to groups that tends to be very amenable. We see small groups get shown employer funded um, cost estimates all the time through our census quote tool. And folks are generally not coming back with, okay, let's just do the minimum for the minimum amount of people and just kind of get me over employer funding so I can get this offer and make sure that the enrollment will be a success. We generally see small groups going above and beyond. Uh, Rather than doing a carve out group for a group of 15. We're just going to fund everybody. I see a lot of small groups instead of just looking at, say, a $25,000 face amount for their employees going up to 50, 75, 100. Um, and I totally agree, Gretchen. I have seen a 15 employee group with employer funding outperform on a premium basis and even a nominal participation basis, let alone percentage basis, outperform a 750 life group. It's pretty surprising. And that small groups are not just small groups that will remain small. I think that's something important for you guys to put in the back of your mind. That 15 life group could be a company that's kind of just getting its sea legs a few years into its existence and um, has a growth sort of mentality. So that 15 life group could turn into a 45 life group, and if they're doing well and want to keep that sort of no employee left behind culture, we see a lot of these groups wanting to fund all employees. All of a sudden, you're tripling the original case results just by nature of this company hiring and choosing to continue to extend that employer funded benefit to all new employees. So I just want to give you guys that perspective. Not all cases will be like that, but I'm thinking of a couple of cases that we've done where we had, I want to say it was a group of maybe 20 employees in California, and they said, we're not going to be 20 forever. We're actually hiring 4 people a year, right? So that is 4 brand new. sales every year just by the nature of the company's growth and their commitment to offering good benefits. You'll also see in the small group space, nonprofits. I just got off a call with a nonprofit organization that we're going to be enrolling here soon, and they're not just their culture is based around offering rich benefits because the employee compensation can't be as high. But when you think about how nonprofits have to operate, we can't have a surplus at the end of the year. We just can't to maintain our status. So we have to spend if we are seeing a surplus. So we try to sink that into the benefit and give it back to the employees wherever we can so that we can attract and retain folks to keep working for us as a nonprofit, right? So small groups have just so much potential. And I think, you know, always work within the market that you feel you are most effective at, where your opportunities are. But I think somebody who, you know, starts a specialty in working with small groups can really make a nice business for themselves, especially if you just figure out how to throw your pitch each and every time over the plate. Um, you can end up with cases that are fully employer funded for all employees. We're able to do a census enrollment. It's no touch, it's done, right? The only question we have to think about is like, will we look at spouses, right? Um, but the convenience is there, and that's why we've developed a lot of these turnkey things. So, Gretchen, I know that you and Joe are kind of our heroes here in putting this page together. Um, could you just give me an idea of your philosophy when building this? Because we have our overarching group sales process page.
Mhm.
Why do you think it was important to speak to small groups
Because
directly? You alluded to it, but
yeah, because the small groups, especially with employer funding, don't they don't need the hand holding, and a lot of people who manage these, who bring these to the table, they want to have more control over what's being communicated and the whole process. So we wanted to create something that was easy to navigate and easy to find the information that you need when you need it. So
yeah,
that was sort of the umbrella goal for this collateral.
yeah. Thank you. And I think for large groups, there are folks who have tons of experience in this business. It's all they do, but they still generally end up having a high amount of use of our team throughout
Yeah.
enrollments. It's not necessarily a case where people start bringing us a couple large groups and all of a sudden I'm going to do this 30,000 employee group on my own with no assistant.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not really logistically possible in any sense of the word, but we are finding that folks that are doing a good job and bringing a lot of small group cases in do eventually want and need in many cases to go self-service. So
Hmm.
that's what this is really designed for. I still think if you are working on your first small group, I would still go a full service route so that you can get an idea of how we do things. You don't have to do things exactly this way, but you also get a sense of the full spectrum of services that we offer. Honestly, we want more people to feel free and comfortable enough to go a self-service route, because selfishly it helps us scale, right? We can spend time increasing the amount of available opportunities that we can help people with. So the more people who feel like they can manage their own cases, kind of start to finish, the better for everybody. But um, let's just kind of talk through this. It's it's kind of similar, you can see, to the format of our group sales process page, but we're walking you essentially through what happens once we sort of get a yes. How do we work with the group independently? You'll see how we do it. You'll watch us take batting practice, and I think you'll pick up a lot of those things quick, but we can impart this kind of knowledge on you as well. So just some key questions for kind of that step one. We got the group to say yes. We need to do a kickoff, right? We need to plan how this enrollment is going to work. And there's a lot of implementation oriented questions that we have to ask in this stage. So, what exactly is it are we enrolling, right? If we're between a couple of um, plan designs, if we are doing some sort of employer funding and we're trying to figure out how much are we going to fund, are we going to offer voluntary coverage if we're not funding the maximum available amount of benefit? Are we going to offer simplified issue underwriting? So in the case of the standard, which I talk about because they're just such a good fit for small groups, we do get simplified issue amounts that are available to us with our premier underwriting offer for groups down to three. That doesn't mean you have to enroll simplified issue underwriting. That doesn't mean you have, like, if you say no to it, you can't do it forever. But for this enrollment, this first enrollment, do we want to stick with just the GI amounts or do we want to look at simplified issue? How much are we going to fund? If we're not funding that GI max, do we want to offer buy-ups? If we're funding that GI max, but we have simplified issue available, do we want to, offer those buy-ups? So what will that look like? Who is eligible for this employer-funded benefit? Will everybody be? Will some, right? Just some logistical stuff there. What does the timeline look like? And for small groups, these timelines can be very different. We've worked with a number of different brokers who work with small groups in a number of different ways. Some people are actually going directly to the office to give presentations and to enroll the employees on site. I think you just have an easier time doing that logistically with the small group, right? If their office is local to you, you can go in, you can sit down, bing, bang, boom. I'm helping people knock out 10 apps online. I just bring my laptop, answer any questions they have, and take them right through. Um, Others will do things a bit more virtually, like we do for every one of our cases, right? So there may be a kind of more extended process. So you'll want to think about that for the enrollment timeline. And of course, it's not just purely your call. It also involves the carrier, right? And how soon we can start depends on some of the tools you're using. What kind of billing are we doing, right? Is it all payroll deducted for anything that's not employer funded? Are we looking at ACH? Is that available to us? There's just a lot of questions for platform setup in that regard, billing setup. So we may need a longer runway for certain groups. So those are things to talk through as well. And you got to talk about how you're going to reach the employees, right? Again, something that's easier for small groups. It can, be an office that is small enough that HR or whoever handles the HR-like responsibilities can just go into each individual room and tell every employee, all right, guys, we have added a new benefit, communicating all those terms, and you have till this amount of time to enroll, right? And a little follow-up email from that. It's a little easier to ask, but you still have to ask, right? How are we going to actually communicate this? And we do have packages of copy in this small group process guide for you. And who's doing what? This is super important. So when we talk about education, will there be a webinar? If there is, who's going to be on it with me? Who's gonna what platform are we gonna do it on? Are you guys a Zoom sort of company? Are you a Teams sort of company? And when you do things like this, how are you normally getting people to make sure they're all on? Now, small groups, we get this awesome, intimate, sometimes sort of webinar scenario where, like, I'm on my computer and there's 15 people who have all crammed together in the conference room, and I'm able to present to them all at once. And it's really nice, and it creates an environment where people feel uh, like they can be conversational, ask questions. So I highly recommend doing some sort of webinar in-person education session. I think they always tend to go well. They're great for the relationship building. But we need to figure out those logistics and just leave the step with these decisions made. Do not pass go, do not collect $200 unless you're able to kind of get these answers or know what questions are there that we still need to bring back to the carrier and iron out with them, right? So, and with regard to the enrollment platform, like I said, even if you're self-service, you may need to interface with our team to ask questions about things like the enrollment platform or billing, right? You'll still be in contact with someone like Sandy. You'll still be in contact maybe with somebody like me for questions. Like it's your job to get it done, but it's not as if we will absolutely shun you if you have questions or there are necessary things that we still need to cover, right? So I want to make that clear. And then a really handy dandy enrollment checklist here that we have that I will pull up. Can we see that, or are we still on the buddy system on my screen?
We're on the buddy system.
All right, let me reshare on that. So uh, our team has your back. They have gone through the work of setting up this checklist for you all. It's very all-inclusive. Use it as cue cards, right? Implementation meetings with the group are so important for this reason. And just make sure you check all the boxes, right? Or as many as you can, right? Some you won't actually need to think about. And that's just an easy check the box and move on. But make sure you check all the boxes. Like, despite yourself, you will cover all of these steps if you're working right off it. And that's what we want. We want to make self-service easy in this case. So you can download that from the page and check it out for some light reading for yourself. But the next stage here is education and marketing. So we have a number of resources that are here, an email series pre-packaged for you that will go through a lot of the important communication. It'll give you an idea of cadence. It'll give you an idea of timing and what message should be said when with regard to how long your enrollment period is. Very, very holistic. We have a flyer that's a Canva template that you can edit. That is really helpful for any in-person events, in email communications, Slack communications. Print it out and pin it up in the corkboard in the break room. Just an easily distributable piece of communication that really gets down to what is most important. Um, Webinar presentation script is coming soon, I promise. My script is like super, super long and I need to pare it down so I'm not getting you into a hour and 45 minute sort of webinar presentation. But again, just another checklist that you can read off of as cue cards. Make sure you're just hitting all of the relevant items that it's important to hit when doing webinar, just from our experience doing hundreds of them, and heading off a lot of questions before they get asked, I think is important because you don't want to end up in a sea of questions if you were going to cover things anyway. So it helps kind of give you a nice order and a prepackaged presentation that is similar to what we're using ourselves. I really like the benefits guide pages. This is something that Gretchen and the team have added recently because we've gotten requests from employers for this. And I think a lot of employers go the way of, all right, if you want access to all the benefits you have available to you, obviously digitally there's a lot of you know there's a lot of tech products out there that will help walk employees through their benefits, but many also just have a benefits guide, either a physical one, like literally heard of companies having physical ones with little um like slip covers or stain covers on the actual pages that you can flip through and get an idea of the benefits. Or if they have some sort of benefits administration platform, just throwing that PDF right into it and it becomes a page of the digital benefits guide. I think it's super helpful. It's an easy way for an employer to hand something to a new employee and say, look, this is all that you have available to you and where you go to get it, and you want to be a part of that book, right? So I love those. We've got templates for the major products you could end up using with those smaller groups. I think we may have a trust mark coming soon. They just recently changed their rules to be a little bit more amicable to small groups. So as soon as we start getting some experience under our belt working with small groups with Trustmark, we'll have one. A lot of these things come from if we already have an active case with them, we'll create these things and then we'll make sure they're kind of added to the repository of stuff here. And then education articles. So not just here's communication on the enrollment, but here's some actual educational content around long-term care in general to help employees understand why the heck are we offering this in the first place, or what even is long-term care. Okay, I get how the product works, but how does long-term care work? You would be surprised, just because we're long-term care nerds. You could be presenting on a webinar about a product, and if you start with the plan design first and the product itself, that's okay, but you'll find that people are thinking, well, what actually is long-term care? So I think that is really important. I like this piece. There's value in a modest plan. I think this keeps folks from really succumbing to the idea that if I'm not purchasing a Cadillac policy, it's not worth purchasing, and giving employees an idea of the power that's in $1,000 a month to pay for professional care. So I think that's really um, helpful. And then our demo pages, we've gone over these before, but use these demo pages, right? Um, we can we can help you in many cases to create a custom rate calculator that is specific to your proposal. But if you're working with the standard, and this is the reason why we actually do a lot of small groups with the standard, the underwriting offer is exactly the same for every single group from 3 lives to 249 lives. So the calculator is going to be the same. So the interesting thing about the standard itself, and doing small groups with the standard is you could actually take one of these demo pages and just run with it for the purpose of having a calculator to provide to employees. So that's a very turnkey process as well that we really like, just about working with the standard lately. And by the way, these sections have deep dives. So if you'd like to read a little bit more of a novel on each of these steps, you can, but we're just kind of keeping it to the high level items. Employees got to know this is coming. That's your goal, right? And they got to know where to go and what to do. And you should have a plan for education already in place from kickoff, and they got to know that that is coming too, and kind of be ready to, especially if employer funded, know what they're getting. And if there are buy-up options, know what they have the ability to do. And when the enrollment closes, right? If you leave with a few those boxes checked, you're doing a good job as far as education and awareness. This is where the calculus really comes in. And a lot of what I talked about um, on that sort of kickoff enrollment window logistics bullet, this is where all that comes into play. So just because a group says yes on today's date, May 7th, does not necessarily mean we will qualify for a 6/1 enrollment start date or a 6/1 effective date, right? There are little nuances with every case that may push you back a month from the desired effective date or the desired enrollment start date because there are a number of things we need to get set up ahead of time. This is where we speak to a lot of the paperwork, especially. When a group says yes, try and get that paperwork done as quickly as possible. This section is important because it'll allow you to communicate what needs to be done and what they need to look out for. So if you're not contracted, I would start to get contracted when you believe the case is on the end zone. Get your appointment done with the specific carrier that you're going to go with. Get your contract set up ahead of time so that the rest can just flow really, really smoothly. We see a lot of cases get held up at sold case form and group application. I think those are big. Anything that needs the employer's signature, right? It's a little more out of your control when you need to track down those signatures. So the sold case form, we'll provide you a link to it. I've shown it multiple times, but it just gives the details that the carrier needs to understand the terms of the enrollment. How is the enrollment going to run from, the actual window of the enrollment? What platform are we going to use? How are we going to administer things like employer funding? Are we payroll deducted? Are we ACH? Can we even do ACH? A lot of those things are answered using that sold case form. So fill that out. Again, Sandy will likely be in contact with you and help be your guide, whether it's to say, hey, everything looks good, we'll get this pushed forward, or it is, a case of, hey, I noticed that the request was for this, but I know you requested ACH billing. Unfortunately, in this case, we can't access this. We'll need to go back and tell the group that, payroll deduction for any buy-ups is what we have to stick to in this case. But she'll be your guide there in helping you. And the sold case form helps Sandy to prepare the group app so that it can be signed by you, by the group, and by Buddy INS in a nice little pass the baton format so that once one person signs, it immediately is sent to the next person. So, do your homework on the sold group case form and don't be afraid to ask questions when you have them because that just makes everything smoother. And again, we see a lot of cases get stuck there. So if you can explain the process ahead of time and inspire that diligence, you're going to be able to hit whatever effective date enrollment window that you desire, the quicker you move. For employer-funded cases, we have a data sheet for the enrollment platform that is super important that we don't talk about all too much, but that allows us and the platform administrator to have all the relevant information we need about the employee to essentially pre-fill their application and allow the enrollment platform to remember how much this employee is being funded for and what they have the option to do above and beyond that. So that's helpful. You want to talk through new hires and terminations. This one comes up every single time. If you don't bring it up, the group will bring it up 100%. So you'll want to know, is there a waiting period for new employees to be able to access any employer paid benefits if they're going to qualify for it right out of the gate, which is important. And terminations. How will you actually handle that? Being able to speak to that process is really helpful. Being able to counsel HR on the fact that when an employee leaves, you're going to want to educate them again on their ability to port the plan. It's super important that they're able to port this policy. So I think it would behoove you to educate them about that. If you're funding some of their plan or all of their plan, you'll need to let them know that they'll have to take over that premium themselves when they port this plan if they'd like to. So a lot of that information, again, a lot of calculus, payroll deductions. So most small group cases are payroll deducted cases. So you'll want to just confirm how that'll be deducted and make sure that the group is set up to be able to handle those payroll deductions. Again, the last group I was meeting with, had a little bit of rockiness with their ability to collect payroll deductions. So that may actually influence how we run the enrollment. Will we try asking for ACH premiums so employees can do buy-ups and we can do spouse coverage, or are we only going to stick to what's employer funded? That's where some of the flexibility can come in that will rise to the surface when you and they start asking these questions. You'll want to test the enrollment platform, whether fully employer funded, with the employee needing to still fill out a few steps and claiming their benefit, or testing the buy-up experience. If you don't get in and test it, your employees that are enrolling are going to be your first testers, and you don't want to wake up in the morning with your first tester, who is somebody who's supposed to buy and own this product, frustrated, right? So the more eyes you get on things, the better. And then the enrollment link, that's like the most important thing. If you don't have that built into the communications, uh, that's trouble, right? Because HR is just going to get those questions. Where do I enroll, right? I've been waiting for it. So we've got resources um, that pertain to that there. And then post-enrollment. So this one's a big deal. Make sure, just like with your individual clients, you have it set up so that you can review every single year, talk to the group about re-enrollment. What are going to be the terms of re-enrollment? Would you like to re-enroll? And what exactly would you like to re-enroll? Um, when you set up the terms in the previous step for how to handle new hires, some groups will actually say, I want to enroll all new hires at once a year. So that's really important to set up that touch point and keep that in mind and say, when are we going to meet to actually review this? Um, kind of remind you of all that's going on here, process the new hires, things like that. So that's important. And if you do re-enrollments and not every employee ends up enrolling, this is your opportunity to continue to layer on that education, because you could get that employee to enroll on a future enrollment period. So this is all kind of centered around making sure that, number one, people who have enrolled get to the right place. They get to their portal. They understand that they can view their policy there, make changes and the like, but then set up with the employer, how do we keep this relationship going on an ongoing basis and continue to meet your needs as it relates to this benefit? So that is kind of it, but I'll tell you, I went over this super, super fast, and there are tons of resources that I didn't click into individually that you guys have here available for your own use. So I would take a look at this and just read through it and get, familiar with the resources if you plan to work with any small groups or even groups in general. This is kind of like a mini version of how a lot of our enrollments are run regardless of size. Obviously, there's a bit more complexity in the larger ones, but that'll give you a real living, breathing example of some of the things we use on all of our enrollments. So I really wanted to give that page some play because I think it's very important, very helpful.
And just, I wanted to point something out. We're having some trouble with some of the Canva links. So Joe, for those of you who know Joe, Joe is taking a look at that. And so if you find a Canva link that isn't going anywhere, just send me an email. We probably know, but just in case.
That's like the one thing about Canva. Sometimes you can make one tiny little change, even if it's to a font type, and all of a sudden, uh, accessibility is difficult.
I know, I'm not sure why that is, but yeah,
But once it's fixed, it's
yeah,
generally
we'll get it
fixed
fixed.
going forward.
Hmm.
Hey, Mark, I know you joined us kind of right in the middle, but we went over, some of the important things, some of the advantages of working with small groups, what we've kind of seen in the carrier space with carriers really starting to adjust to be more amicable to small groups. We went over the page, obviously. Any other flavor that you want to give on really our perspective on
Yep.
small
Well,
groups?
well, I'll give you a case study. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Always.
The reason I was late is because I was on a call with a client with one of our brokers with a doctor who was looking at a small group program for his 4 employees. So, good case study for this conversation. His dad had just recently activated his dad's long-term care policy to get care. So he's like, "It's funny you should reach out. Good timing because I'm going through this myself, and I've seen what the insurance policy is paying for. So I like the fact that I need to have this protection." So pretty typical, right, type of clientele, right, has been a caregiver recently. And we showed him the policy, and the key for that was just to help him understand that the policy pays out, the hybrid policy. In this case, it was the standards with the 5% inflation in California, just like the individual policy pays out. So just helping them understand the hybrid concept because his dad's policy was traditional. I didn't know the rates could be guaranteed. I didn't know I
Yep.
could do this without health underwriting. It's just those awareness pieces, right, that we always talk about. That was the key. And he said, wow, this is a lot less expensive than the other quotes that my advisor had been giving me. So I'm just listening to those buying signals, right, and hearing this firsthand with him. It wasn't about the enrollment experience. It wasn't about a lot of that with this case. It was more about, is it worth doing? Is this good value? Why is it a good value? And then he knew he had to get it for his employees as well. So we were talking about how does he pay for it for his employees? Is it pre-tax or after tax? Some of those nuances. But it really is kind of fundamentals, right? LTC 101. And when you get to the enrollment part of the process, again, keeping it simple, bringing our team on, that's really the key because that's probably not going to be the key thing in the first conversation, especially for small businesses. I'm not working with the HR, I'm working with the owner right here. So they just want to know, is this worth doing? What are the gotchas? And once you check those boxes, I think they're very enthusiastic and excited about it. So that was my experience just now on the call. And
Yeah, I gave a case study of the call I came from just before this study group. And I think there's a lot of similarities. My case started with same thing. A family member activated a long-term care policy years ago, saw a lot of benefit from it. And, if I can get that selfishly for myself, but also for all of our employees, then I think that's a huge win because I know what it can do. And I want to make sure it works the same way. And if it works in different ways, just let me know how they're different. So those cases tend to be really good, right? I just want access to this benefit because I have been personally touched by the benefit in some way, shape, or form. And I think it definitely helps to um, dictate what flavor of case you're going to have because, like you said, it wasn't about the enrollment experience with the group you just met with. Same with the one I just met with, but you will have some groups that will actually laser focus in on the enrollment experience. So you may need to borrow some items from the sales guide in step 3, step 4, a little early to give people an idea. You may need to lean on the demo page a little bit more. But for those who have, sort of understood the long-term care benefit and are more maybe product focused, uh, maybe the one pager from Product Buddy ends up being your winner. We don't want to give you so many different resources that you don't know where to go, but I think what this page does that we debuted for you here today is puts it all in steps, right? And if your employer is asking you about a specific step, you can click that button and bang, you've got a list of resources that speak to that step. You've got essentially an article for each step that will kind of tell you how things will go and what you need to do. So in what we provide to you all, it's going to be more in that vein, just continuing to make sure that whatever step you're in, we've got what you need there. And, not putting out pieces without telling you where it may serve you. And you will start to figure out your favorite resources. I love the one pager I can just read straight off of it, or I love the demo page because I can easily explain the enrollment, you know, sort of experience for employees just by showing all the buttons they can click and what they'll eventually do when the enrollment is live. That's what we hope to do. And I think that'll really do it as far as speaking to small groups. Gretchen, do you have
Um,
anything to add?
Jason, do you want to show where the small group process is?
I absolutely do. So I'm just going to pretend like we are back at the home page. Oh, excuse me, I'm in the QA version of our portal.
It's easy to do.
I was working on the next generation, excuse me. Um, so when we are in here, make sure you have group selected at your dashboard and go to sales guides here at the bottom, small group, and that is the process page for that. If you want the overarching group sales process page, start here. It's right up at the top, or when you're at the dashboard, it's this like mystifying golden glowing button that looks like it was the highlight piece from a treasure chest, right? Right here, learn group LTC. And yeah, I just want to give a shout to these like quick access buttons.
Mhm.
Um, if you are somebody who is locked to the sidebar like me, I've started to use these buttons a little bit more. Um, let me know if you like these and find use out of it, but just, find your North Star. This is the overarching sales process page. Small group is under sales guides.
Yep.
And we'll
Thanks, Jason.
continue to do buddy system state of the unions, right? So we can help you understand what and where we're constantly adding new resources. So we want to grant your wishes wherever we can. Just let us know what you're seeing, what your experience is, and what we can do to help you.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything? Questions?
I want to tell everybody that on Tuesday, if you are so inclined to join the Tuesday study group, we're going to be doing a session specifically on AI tools and how AI tools, love them or hate them, like me, uh, can help you build your business and streamline processes and take some of that admin lift off of you.
How
So
about love them and hate them?
that is how I feel. It's a love-hate relationship.
You're not just going to get a toxically positive
No.
view on AI. We have all, had a point where we've had it up to here with figuring out how to make it work for our business.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be able to give you a real and honest and transparent view into
Yeah.
how we've been using it.
And you're going to get some free prompts to help you start out if you
Nice.
haven't already started. Yeah.
And there will be success to share, plenty of
There
them, I assure
absolutely
you.
will be. Yes, there will be. I have had success.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you all being on here. I hope you found this helpful today. We help even one person feel comfortable with taking a group case and feeling like they know exactly what to do with it once it lands in their lap, then it's a win for us. Um, until next week, hope you enjoyed, be well, and we'll talk to you then. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.